So I guess I was wrong.
Oh, I don't know. You might be right.
Said in an hour.
Well, I mean, it may be at any time, but we'll start. I mean, as soon as everybody gets here. Because who knows, you know?
Told me to get here, so
We'll do the best we can because otherwise we're going to go anywhere. As long as we start voting, that'll be it.
we have
Let's still wait for Pat to see what else she will. But he could have switched those in the guys see that vote.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Put it on eBay, see how much I get.
The subcommittee is called to order, and today we're meeting to discuss the topic medical radiation, an overview of the issues. By now, I'm sure many of you have read or at least heard of the New York Times article series on medical radiation errors. The patient stories highlighted in those articles are heart-wrenching and have raised huge concerns and questions for me, as well as for many of my fellow members in the House of Representatives. I actually was just reading now today's New York Times, where there's a front-page story about a group, a radiation oncology group in Melbourne, Florida, that raised a lot of the issues. I mean, the article today raised many of the issues that we're going to bring out today, but particularly disturbing was the fact that this group practice apparently had physicians who were not present, who were actually overseas and were billing on the assumption that those physicians were present and I guess had to be present under the rules, and yet they were not. So those are some of the problems that they're highlighted in today's New York Times and have been in a whole series. I want to start, however, by saying that medical radiation undoubtedly saves lives. It has reshaped the world of diagnostics and has offered patients less invasive alternatives for treating complex and life-threatening conditions. Personally, I don't want to express any concern that in having this hearing that we're sending the message that medical radiation is bad. I want to assure you that that's not the case. It's important that patients do not stop going to their scheduled treatments or getting their CAT scans when they need them, and we're not here today to make the statement that medical radiation should not be used. But we are here today to learn more about the field and to examine what the driving factors are when things go wrong. Due to the dangerous nature of these technologies, when things do go wrong, the effects on patients are horrendous. As mentioned, the benefits that we as a society have gained from these advancements are enormous, but we often forget the fact that we're still dealing with something that is toxic to the human body. When it is delivered correctly, a single CAT scan can deliver as much radiation as 300 chest X-rays. With operating technology as powerful and dangerous as this, it's even more crucial that quality and safety are always front and center. But tragically, as highlighted in these New York Times articles, this is not always the case. A procedure with such a small margin of error should be stringently overseen and monitored, but these critical steps appear to be lacking in many cases. With all the advancements the industry has made, these technologies have become more complex and complicated to operate. It's shocking to me that in many states, individuals who operate these devices do not need to be licensed and are therefore not regulated at all in terms of education and expertise. Even in states where there are licensing requirements, the requirements to report errors and the penalties for making errors are basically non-existent or not enforced. And as a result, we have no idea how often these errors occur and have no good data on where the weaknesses in the system truly are. I understand Mr. Barrow has legislation that deals with training and possibly accreditation as well. So, you know, obviously when we have these hearings, we're looking at the possibility of legislation, and Mr. Barrows is certainly one of those that we would be looking at. I think part of the problem could be the fact that no single agency has authority over the entire spectrum of issues related to medical radiation, and because of this, things are more likely to fall through the cracks. And I'm eager to hear from our witnesses today about this and what problems it presents. In addition to the lack of oversight from a regulatory perspective, there also appears to be very little guidance to physicians on the appropriateness of use of these technologies, especially with respect to radiation dosage and lifetime exposure of radiation. One of our witnesses today will go into more detail on this issue, but for example, dosing for the same CAT scan can vary by huge amounts between and within facilities. In addition, there are questions as to the appropriateness of use of these scans. I know from personal experience that healthcare providers are very quick to order yet another CAT scan without talking to patients about the health risks, let alone the cumulative effects of multiple scans. When I say my own experience, it's from my mom. My mom passed away last December, and the reality, not this December, but the previous one, and I remember she had pancreatic cancer. When we were going around to different hospitals, and we ended up, I think, at 4 different hospitals, every time I would go to a new hospital, I would bring the scan with me, you know, the disc, I guess, And I would give it to them, and they'd say, well, we can't use that. And I would say, well, why? And they'd say, well, you know, our machines don't operate that way, or maybe it's a good idea to have another one. And I wasn't concerned. I mean, frankly, I wasn't addressing it from a cost perspective, although that's a big factor. But I was worried about the health implications. And, you know, frankly, no one said to me that there was a problem. It was always like, oh, that's not a problem. You know, she can have it done again. And nobody actually would use the previous one. I was never able to get them to use the disc that I had brought with me. They always had a reason why they couldn't use it. And maybe there was a good reason, but it just seems that maybe the lack of interoperability or, you know, one of those things that needs to be addressed. Many in Congress have questioned the overuse of medical imaging, but for the most part, those conversations have centered on cost implications. I have to wonder, though, if there are not also health implications as well, and I'm eager to hear from our witnesses today about this issue and what's being done to study the long-term cumulative effects of medical radiation. Our witnesses today are all intimately familiar with these types of technologies, the possibilities they hold, and the dangers they can present. And I'd like to welcome especially Ken Misrak, who is, where is Ken? He's on the next panel, I guess, who has traveled here from my home state of New Jersey, and also Mr. Parks, whose son's story was featured in one of the New York Times articles. And we appreciate your taking the time to speak to the committee on this very important issue, and I think we're going to have some interesting conversation. Before I recognize Mr. Whitfield, though, I did want to say that, you know, just reading today's New York Times article, there's so many different factors here. You know, how much radiation, what type of technologies are used, whether we should have doctors present, how long they should be present, whether they should be nearby or there the whole time. It's a very complex issue, and I don't mean to be simplistic about it, but we should also get to the bottom of it. So with that, I'll recognize my colleague from Kentucky, Mr. Whitfield.
Well, thank you, Chairman Pallone, and I also want to thank the witnesses for being here today to help educate us on this particularly important subject matter. And medical radiation involves both radiation therapy and medical imaging. The medical community uses radiation therapy to treat cancerous tumors, including brain cancer, breast cancer, lung cancer, and prostate cancer, just to name a few. They use medical imaging, like CT scans and mammograms, to find those tumors and identify other problems. It is clear that the overwhelming majority of Americans who receive radiation therapy and medical imaging benefit greatly, and thousands of lives are saved each year because of these treatments and procedures. This hearing will also, however, focus in part on tragic events associated with radiation therapy. These events raise legitimate questions that we need to explore, and my hope is that the members of the committee and the public will listen to the witnesses who are experts in this field and not proceed with preconceived notions. We must examine the issues associated with radiation therapy and medical imaging, and if there are problems to be addressed, we need to work with the manufacturers and the healthcare providers to do so. However, as we examine these issues, it is important that no one comes away from this hearing thinking radiation therapy and medical imaging are too dangerous to use, because too many lives are at stake. I am particularly interested to hear from the manufacturers how these life-saving devices work. I'm also interested in hearing from the various provider groups on the training associated with operating these complex devices and how the different professional societies develop criteria so these devices can be operated safely. Radiation treatment is a complex issue, and so we welcome the witnesses here today to help and are excited that you can help educate us on what, if anything, and what steps we need to take. And I would yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you. Gentlewoman from Ohio, Ms. Sutton, is next for an opening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate you holding this hearing today. It's an important and complex issue that deserves our attention. And all of us know someone whose life has been saved by medical radiation, whether a tumor was discovered with a CT scan and treated before it grew into something unmanageable, or whether someone we love beat prostate cancer through the help of radiological seeds. There's no doubt that medical radiation has allowed people to stay on this earth with their loved ones much longer. However, as we've learned, terrible, tragic, heartbreaking events can occur and have occurred when something goes awry with medical radiation therapy, primarily in cancer patients. I was greatly saddened to read the stories in the New York Times, which included a tragic story about a breast cancer patient from my district who suffered a radiation overdose in 2006 when a physicist entered incorrect information into the treatment planning computer. Her name was Myra Jean Garman, and she was in so much pain from the radiation overdose and the resulting side effects that she eventually committed suicide. According to the Ohio Department of Health, there have been 18 incidence reports with respect to medical radiation over the past 2 years. Obviously, we want to reach a place where there's no need to file any incidence reports because there are no incidents. Patient safety must always be our primary concern, and patient safety in radiation therapy as well as patient safety in diagnostic radiation are critical. We're here today to learn about the best way to ensure patients are protected, to ensure that patients are given the right test at the right time, and that no patient ever suffers through a radiation overdose, to ensure that our medical equipment is safe and that our workers are well trained. And I look forward to learning about the issues surrounding medical radiation from our witnesses today. And I thank the witnesses for being here to deal with this very complex issue, and I yield back my time.
Thank you. We are going to have votes, and I know there are quite a few, and I think they're the last ones of the day. So I'll find out soon, but we're just so that we're probably not going to get to the panel before the votes. We'll try to do as many openings as we can, and then you'll have to wait around probably an hour or so for us to come back, unfortunately. Next is the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Shimkus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the Parks family for their attendance and being here. We know it's not easy. I want to concur with the comments of the chairman. Radiation therapy has been very successful in saving lives. Early diagnosis and early treatment has prolonged the lives of thousands of Americans, and this should be in no way not an attempt, but we don't want to scare people away from doing this, and some of these stories are starting to do that. And we just have to be careful. You know, cancer survival rates, 5-year survival rates have gone from 50% to upwards of 95% in many cancer cases. And that is because of this technology and this. We have to identify the problem, encourage people to move forward so these mistakes don't occur. And in this case would be software applications and training. In talking with healthcare professionals and the like, a scalpel in the hands of a trained professional does great good. A scalpel in the hands of someone who's untrained does great harm. And that's, I hope, the focus of this hearing, and we look forward to the testimony. We do thank the Parks families and those who've suffered loss, and your testimony is very, very important because it helps us focus on the truth. And I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Shimkus. Gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Barrow, and sponsor of the bill that we mentioned before.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for holding this hearing to call attention to the serious problem of accidents and errors in the delivery of radiological services. While we can't expect either the people or the technology to be perfect, when you go into a doctor's office or you enter the hospital, you have the right to expect a certain level of competence and training from the people taking care of you. I'm the lead sponsor of the CARE bill, which will set minimum educational and certification requirements for the technical personnel who perform medical imaging and radiologic therapy. Most people are surprised to find that many states don't license or regulate radiologic technologists at all. Common sense tells us that properly educated and certified personnel will produce better medical outcomes. Not only that, but more efficient delivery and a reduction in duplicative testing and waste will also cut costs. I recognize that the problems highlighted by recent media reports are likely to require multifaceted solutions, but I'm convinced that we must start by ensuring that the workforce is properly trained and certified. With that, I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Barrow. The other gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Gingrey.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Whether used in the detection or treatment of patients, medical radiation has become an important part of medical care in this country. Over the latter half of the 20th century through today, we have seen this technology evolve and add to the quality of health care in our country. As an OBGYN physician for nearly 30 years, I have seen firsthand the benefits of this technology for the health and the welfare of my patients. The chances of survival for a cancer patient, as already mentioned, are increased exponentially the earlier the cancer is detected. During this Congress, we've heard from patients and indeed members of Congress alike who credit their health and their welfare to the early detection of cancer. For others, radiation treatments like chemotherapy prove the decisive factor in life or death. Ms. Lindley is one such patient who credits selective internal radiation therapy with saving her life. And thank you for coming before this committee and sharing your story with us today, Ms. Lindley. Unfortunately, for all of the benefit that patients see from such technology, there are also troubling stories of trauma and sorrow. The story of James Parks is one such case, and the trauma his son, indeed his whole family, endured because of a radiation accident is a sobering tale. His story reminds us how important adherence to proper safety protocols is, as well as the review of adverse medical events can be to the overall health of all of our patients. Earlier this month, the Food and Drug Administration announced a new initiative to reduce unnecessary radiation exposure from medical imaging. Therefore, this is a very timely hearing, and I would like to thank Chairman Pallone for calling it today. However, I would like to sound one note of caution. Remember the furor that surrounded the United States Preventative Services Task Force recommendations on mammography? Screenings that had this information, of course, has not faded from the psyche of this country. That incident and the congressional hearings that followed outlined for this committee the importance of protecting the rights of patients and their physicians to decide what medical treatments are appropriate. Medicine is an art form. It can be taught from a book, but it must be practiced with medical experience and, yes, balanced judgment. With that thought in mind, I want to thank all of you witnesses for coming before the committee today. I look forward to hearing from you in the question period, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman, my time.
Thank you. I'm going to try to get two more members in, so I guess that would be Ms. Eshoo and Mr. Green, and then we're going to have to break. But we'll continue after, if anyone, for those who come back. The gentlewoman from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this important hearing. I think all of us, in reading the recent articles on vulnerable patients and what happened to them, were really stunned by it. That's number one. Number two, I can really track over just the period of time that I've been a member of Congress. This is my 18th year, and the co-chair of the Medical Device Caucus, the tremendous improvements in this area, which holds out so much hope for especially cancer patients in our country. But clearly, something needs to be done in the area of supervision, the area of licensing, and that we, in my view, we need national standards in this area, because it's right now it's catch as catch can. So I'll submit my full statement for the record. I look forward to hearing from the witnesses. This is an important hearing. If we need more information, I will certainly participate in all of the hearings so that we come up with a framework that really fits what the problems are, so that no one is subjected to the over-radiation that we've read about. I also would like to ask for a unanimous consent request that Mr. Waxman's statement for the record be accepted, and that he has a let's see, a statement for the record that relative to a 52-year-old father who is a constituent of his and the father of 3 children in Los Angeles, and what happened to him relative to excessive radiation at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I think we can get two more in, Donna, so Ms. Christensen wants to stay. We'll start with Mr. Green and then go to Ms. Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask unanimous consent my full statement be placed in the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
First is I'm glad you're having this hearing. A lot of us read the information, and our health subcommittee has worked for many years on expanding opportunity for CT scans and treatment because of the new technologies is changing every day. And I'll give my own example. I went about 7 years ago and in Houston, our Heart Institute, and they had a concern about a problem, and I did a scan of my heart, an image of my cardiovascular system, and that was great. I went back a few years later with staff, and the equipment had already changed because we're seeing better equipment every day, and we don't want to lose that ability to diagnose and to treat in the case of cancers. The problem is if we don't deal with this, we will scare both practitioners but also patients away from it. So that's why the hearing's so important today, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for doing it. We need to get it right because the next generation of treatment can be less invasive than what it is now. But we surely don't want to stop it because the people are scared they're going to be over-radiated, a person's not trained to use the equipment they're using, or that it's not the proper dosage. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and look forward to working with you and see what we need to do to deal with it. So,
thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for holding this hearing. I'd also like to ask that my full statement be included in the record. You know, as a physician that practiced for, if I include my residency, maybe 25 years, I've had the opportunity to see the benefits that the diagnostic and therapeutic radiology have, and I'm sure every one of us on this committee, either ourselves or in our family, have seen those benefits firsthand. But we always have to balance the benefits and the risks, and in favor of the benefit to the patient and minimizing the risk. So we've seen some instances recently where, and this has happened over the years, where people have been over-radiated and have had severe repercussions because of it. And we have a vehicle, at least one vehicle before us that can rectify this, and it's something that we must do, and I look forward to working with my colleagues to ensure that when individuals go for either diagnostic reasons or therapeutic reasons, that they are not harmed by the machinery and the radiation. And so I look forward to hearing the testimony of our witnesses this morning and your comments on how we can improve the safety of these of radiation for our patients. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I think we have at least an hour of votes. So we'll come back after that. If anyone else comes back, we'll let them do an opening statement. Otherwise, we'll go right to you. But we're talking, I'm sure, no earlier than 11:30. Thank you. Committee is in recess.